In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at creating MMA style designs working with simple vector graphics. And here I have a kind of, I guess you could say, heraldry type design, victorious MMA. We've got the double-headed eagle and then a shield here with the V in it and the crown, etc. Now when we look at these types of designs, we see these types of designs and effects going on a lot in the MMA fashion and other types of fashion in the apparel industry. And I often like to think that I'm able to design things at a level that goes out of my shop at a fashion level whenever I have the opportunity to do that. Obviously there are times when you have to do what the client wants. It might be a logo or something like that. But if you have some creative freedom with a design and you can work with basic vector and some very simple effects we're going to get into here in this tutorial, you can set up designs like this very quickly without all of the hand-drawn work, but still have the same look and make it look like you've put all of that work into that design for that customer or that client. Once again, as I've often said, if your competitors can just work with flat vector, but you can create designs like this, you're going to have a huge advantage over them in competition. To get started here, we'll just go ahead and analyze my design the way I set it up as a vector, and it's really not that complex of a design. It's only comprised of approximately 62 vector objects, but these were just duplicated and mirrored. What I did is I created these wings as kind of like outlines, and then I placed them one behind the other, so that they're set up for me to do my work with the Bevel Tool in CorelDRAW. So to get started here, the first thing I'll do is I'm just going to go ahead and duplicate this so I keep a copy of the original. Just left click, hold down, right click, one time release, and that'll duplicate that. Let me go ahead and duplicate even one more time here. I like to keep backups of the graphics as I'm working with them in Corel in case I need to go back to them. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm very simply going to start working with the Bevel tool, and I'll need the Bevel Docker for that. If you need to get to that, you can go to Window, come here to Dockers, and then come down to the Bevel, and that'll open that up for you. I'll simply go through here and select my vector objects. Once again, this tutorial is not about the vector, but about the MMA style effects. I'll go ahead and move this color palette over here. Now right now this is set up to soft edge, and I could use that if I wanted to. But I'm going to change this to center and click on apply. And you can see that I'm getting a beveled effect here. And you can see that this wing or feather is actually kind of behind the other. So when I apply over here, they'll be positioned as if they were on top of each other for the chiseled or beveled effect that I'm going to use in creating this design. Now I'll need to go through all of the different objects and apply that bevel effect to them. I'm going to change this to a white just to make it a little bit lighter. Not a blue, but a white here. Now I'll just come through here, and unfortunately can't select all of them and apply it, so I'll have to go through and apply this to all the different objects in the graphic. And we'll go ahead and pause here, and I'll go ahead and apply all that, and then we'll continue with the tutorial. Now once I've gone through and applied the bevel effect to all of the different vector elements in my graphic here, you can see that we've got some depth in this design. And we're going to be able to work with that to set this up to give it a nice hand-drawn look and also add some other effects to it so that we get a very effective MMA style look for this particular graphic. Once I've set all those up, the next thing I'll need to do is go ahead and just select everything here. I'm going to create a duplicate again, just so that I've got a backup of that if I need it in the design process. Then I'll come in here and I'll just right click on any one of these objects, and I'm going to select break 124, select it across multiple layers apart. And I'll go ahead and break that apart. And that's going to break the bevel effect, which is a bitmap, apart from my vector objects. Now once that's done, I usually like to go through and select all of my vector and kind of separate that out, but I'll use my simple steps for that just to grab all those vector objects because I know that they all have a white fill and I don't want to go through the hassle of selecting them. So over here and go to color management. I know this is a separation application, but I do use it a lot in the design process. I'm going to go to white here, select all objects. That gives me 62 objects. Those are all selected. I'll go ahead and minimize this. You can grab this X here and just move these over and separate those from the bevel, and that's the X in the center. I'll move this over this way. Next thing I'm going to do is go ahead and select all of this, and I'll duplicate this again just in case I need that again. I'll take this and I'll go to bitmaps, convert to bitmap. I'm going to go with RGB. I'm going to have my transparent background turned off, 300 dpi. I will enable anti-aliasing, and I'll select OK. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and copy this and paste this on top. Then I'm going to go to Effects, I'm going to go to Transform, and I'm going to go to Invert. Then I'm going to come over here to my Interactive Tools, and I'm going to go to Transparency. I'm going to go from None to Uniform, the type of transparency, and I'm going to come down to Color Dodge. I'm going to slide this 50 starting point all the way back to 0. Now you can't see anything right now, but I'm going to start working with effects here. So I'm going to go to Bitmaps, Blur, and then Gaussian Blur. And that's set up at 5 pixels. And I want to zoom in so we can get a closer look on this, or look at this. Go to Bitmaps, Blur, Gaussian Blur, 5 pixels, and we can see that effect starting to take form. And I'll bring this out to say 19 pixels, right about there. And you can see that now we have a really nice shaded, or kind of a platform or a start for our hand-drawn look of this chiseled type graphic that we're working with. I'm going to go ahead and select OK here, and I'll go with that for now. Then I'm going to go ahead and duplicate that again, and I'll take this and I'm going to go to Bitmaps, Convert to Bitmap, same settings, select OK. Now with that set up like that, I'm going to go ahead and copy this. I'm going to paste it again, and this time I'm going to go to Bitmaps, and I'm going to come down to Contour, and I'm going to get the edges. So I'm going to go to Edge Detect, because I want some pencil lines that I can work with, so it looks like it's kind of hand-drawn here. I've got my sensitivity set to 10. I'll go ahead and select OK, and let that process. Now we can see we've got some lines here that are going to give us some of that hand-drawn look that we're looking for. To go further, I'm going to go to Bitmaps, Blur, and I'm just going to soften this a little bit. I'm only going to go about 1 pixel this time, right about there, and select OK. Now I can see I've got a lot of extra data in there, and I really don't want that. So to get rid of that, I'll simply go to Effects, Adjust, then I'm going to come up here to Tone Curve. I'll bring this over, and I'm just going to left click here, make sure that this is set to straight. I'm just going to pull up here into the top, and we'll see that start disappearing, and I can slide this over to adjust it, to make sure that I keep some of that. I don't want to get rid of all of it, but I just want to get rid of the majority of it. And then I'll go ahead and select OK. Now we can see that we have kind of like a hand-drawn look, or some pencil lines here that we can use to give this more of that hand-drawn look. I'm going to come over here to my transparency tool again. I'm going to come up here to Uniform, and I'm going to set this to Subtract. I'm going to slide the starting point all the way back to 0. And then we can go ahead and zoom in here and see that we're starting to get a really nice hand-drawn look with some shading set up in here, getting close to the actual design effect that we're looking for. I'm going to go ahead and take these two objects. I'll just lasso these, and I'm going to go ahead and duplicate these again. Remember, I like to keep my backups here. Then I'm going to grab one of my vector backups over here. We'll go ahead and duplicate that. I'll bring this over. Now this I'm going to take, and I'm going to go ahead and weld this all together. But one thing we want to be aware of before we do a weld, I'm going to go ahead to my object properties here on my fill, and I'm going to turn on fill winding here, and I'm going to click on weld. And you can see that didn't really come out correctly. And you can see that sometimes when you're doing welding in Corel, you can see we've got some extra data or extra objects here in the vector, and I didn't really want that. I'll hit Control Z, and you'll see here if I come over here and I turn off fill winding, and then go ahead and weld, it'll come out correctly. So now I have a vector object that I can use to apply more effects to my artwork here. I'll go ahead and take this and just duplicate this again here on top. Go ahead and lasso all three of these objects, hit C and E to center everything. Then I'll come here to what would be on top, my converted here. I want to hold down Alt and get to my curve on layer 1, which is actually my vector object. I'm going to go ahead and take that, and I'm going to go over here to my fill, and I'm going to go to a texture fill, and I'm going to come over here to samples 5. I'm going to come over here and I'm going to grab this texture right here. I'll left click, and that'll apply that. Then I'll come over here to texture fill properties, and I'm going to open that up. Now this is fossil, and I'm going to make some adjustments. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring the density down so that I get some nice cracks from this. And we can click preview there, and we can see we get a little bit of less of that effect. And I'm going to take the maximum length, and I'm going to bring that up quite a bit and select OK. I've got a really different effect there. The next thing I'm going to do is change my shade color to solid black. Go ahead and click on preview, and this looks good, so I'll go ahead and select OK. And now we can zoom in and we can see that we've got some cracks and things like that that would really fit with the type of look we're looking to recreate for this hand-drawn chiseled look, with the cracks of something like a granite or something that was actually chiseled out as a design. Now with that being set up, what I want to do is go ahead and take this vector object, and I'll get this X in the center and move this over here, and I'm going to do some work on this separately just to set it up to use it as an effect. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and copy this and paste this back in, and I'm just going to fill it with a 40% gray. And here I'm going to go back to my transparencies, and I want to knock a lot of that gray color out of there. So I'll change this to uniform. I'm going to come down here to divide, and you can see that we're removing a lot of that gray. Now if I bring up to 50%, we get rid of a lot of it. Go up there and we've gotten rid of most of it. So we've removed most of that gray look. Go ahead and select both of these objects again. And we'll go ahead and bring these over here, duplicate these. We'll go bitmaps, convert to bitmap, 300 dpi again, select OK. I've got that effect set up there. I'm going to go ahead up here to where I'm working. Just hit C and E to center that and bring it in. And now we can see that effect applied to those other objects. I'm going to take this and cut this and paste it in on top because I want to see if that's the correct one or not. Or am I getting something else here? I've got two objects selected. I don't want two objects, I want one. There we go. And I can see that this is actually getting onto different layers. So I'm going to do at this point is just go ahead and group everything, because over here in my object manager I'm getting some different layers and I don't want to be working with those. So I'm going to go ahead and group here, and that'll bring everything together. Group of 3 objects, and I can go ahead and ungroup, and I want to make sure I'm getting that effect of those cracks when I select that. So here on top I can look at this. This is a bitmap. This bitmap here, I guess, and you can come in this X and click on this and move it, and that would be the one I'm looking for. So I'll go ahead and cut and paste that in. Now I know that's in there correctly. At this point I'm going to take the transparency for this and I'm going to change this to uniform. I'm going to go to subtract, and I'm going to bring my starting point back to 0. Now to soften this up, because it is kind of rough here, I can go ahead and put a blur on that also. So I'll go to bitmaps, blur, and select Gaussian blur. Go with say 2 pixels and select OK. And now we can see how nice that effect is. So you've got a nice effect set up and several different bitmaps with effects that we can start working with to complete the work on this design or this effect. At this point, I guess I could look at this and start to analyze, is there anything in the design that I want to tweak or strengthen? And looking at this, I think I want the pencil lines to be a little bit stronger, and I believe those would be right here. Perhaps not. I think this would be actually the second layer, because I know that there's a lens effect on that. So with that selected, I'll go ahead and cut that just to make sure. Yep, and that is my line. So I'll hit Control Z. That's been cut, and I can paste that back in, and you can see how I can strengthen the effect of those lines. Now that might be a little bit too much, but because it has a transparency on that, I can come up here and bring some of that back, so we're not getting so strong there with that. Now that being the case, these are all set. I might want to roughen this up just a little bit. So I could go with something like bitmaps here, come down to distort, and go with blocks. And we'll see what type of effect we get with the blocks on that layer. Now that might have too much transparency. You can see that it's starting to kind of roughen that up a little bit. And I'll go ahead and go with that and select OK. The other question is, am I happy with the strength of my cracks? Now at this point I probably want to start naming my bitmaps just so that I know what they are. So I'll go through here, I'm going to bring this over, and I know that this is top lines there, so I'll go ahead and call this top lines. That was the last one I put the effects on. Top lines. And I know that if I go ahead and select this bitmap, get the X in the center, just left click, move that, see what it is, hit Control Z to put it back, and I'll click here one time and I'll call this lines again. I'm going to do the same thing with this bitmap. Go ahead and select this, move it. I can see that this is my cracks effect. So hit Control Z, move that back, click this. This is going to be my cracks. This is just so I know what I'm working with when I'm dealing with these objects. I'll go ahead and select here, and I believe this is my shading. Let's go ahead and take a look here. Nope, this is another line. Okay, so we know that this is lines also. And then this bitmap here on the bottom is actually our shading. So I'll hit Control Z and we'll go back there. And I'll change this and call it shading in my object manager. That way I know what these are as I'm setting up my final effects here. So I can take a look at my cracks here, and I can go ahead and copy these again, paste these in, and we'll see if they get kind of a little bit stronger there. And I might go ahead and take that and move the transparency back on that a little bit, just to get a nice effect there. Now that this is all set up and I'm happy with the design effects, I can go ahead and select everything right here, and I'll go to bitmaps and convert to bitmap. Now I'm going to convert this to a monochrome for the sake of the tutorial. So I'm going to convert this at 1800 DPI and select OK. Now I could do a lot more tweaking with this design and a lot more work with it, but I just want to lay a foundation for these effects and how we can set them up and how easily we can do them. And for the sake of the tutorial, I don't want to go into a lot of detail at this point, but we can see how we can get these type of effects very easily, working literally in a matter of minutes in CorelDRAW if we know how to use the different tools that are available for our bitmap effects and working with our transparency, etc., which are really just our merge or blend modes for our images. This is going to take just a minute to process because of the high resolution that it's processing at. Once that's finished processing, and I did that at a really high resolution so I could convert it to a monochrome bitmap with a transparent background here in CorelDRAW. I'm going to go ahead and go to bitmaps now, and I'm going to go to mode, and I'm going to select black and white. I'm going to go with Jarvis. I'm going to slide my intensity all the way up to 100, and then I'm going to go ahead and select OK. And that again will take just a minute to process. And I'm working at high resolution so I can blur this with a transparent background and get a monochrome bitmap that has a transparent background that I can use in Corel. And then I can apply spot color properties to that, and I can also use my vector object for this graphic as a background. Once that's finished, I'll go ahead to a color palette and left click on the X to make the background transparent. I'm going to go to bitmap again. I'm going to go convert to bitmap. This time I'm going to go to RGB at 300 DPI transparent background and select OK. This is very important, this transparent background. Also making sure that your fill is set to none so that you maintain the transparency. I'll go ahead and click OK, and that'll take just a minute to process. Now once that's done, it doesn't look very good, but I can go ahead and make one last adjustment here. I'll go to bitmaps and I'll come down here to blur and I'll select Gaussian blur. That's 2 pixels. I'll take a look at 1 here. A little bit more than that, 1.5, and that seems to look okay. Now at this point I've got a monochrome bitmap that I can, actually I got one more step here. I'm going to go bitmap, mode, and then black and white again. Okay, here we go. Select OK. Let that process. Now I've got a monochrome bitmap which has a CMYK background and a CMYK outline or foreground. I can left click to knock out the background color and right click to change the foreground color. And now you can see that we've got this set up as a bitmap with this MMA effect. And we can take this, I'll go ahead and select my vector object here, I'll hit C and E, and this will now be on top of that vector. I'm going to go ahead with these two selected and group them just to bring them together. And I'll go ahead and ungroup here. This is my monochrome bitmap on top. If I hold down Alt, I can select my curve or the vector that I had there. I'll go ahead and take the outline off of that, and I can change the fill color of that also. So now I have a lot of control over how I'm going to set up the color and do the color separations for this MMA style look. I'll go ahead and give that a white color, and then I'll come here and click on the monochrome. I'll right click that with a black. I could also, if I wanted to, make this even darker now just by copying and pasting the monochrome bitmaps on top of each other and changing their colors or doing different things with them to give it a really different look. But at this point, this is ready to be applied to a mock-up or a t-shirt design, fully color separatable art with the monochrome bitmaps and the vector, and we've gone from a flat vector to a MMA style look very easily. Now I may go through and work on this design some more, add some grunge and distress and different things to design, before it's ready to actually go onto a t-shirt, but we can see how we can make these effects going from vector to a hand-drawn look that has a chiseled look that's similar to what we see in the MMA style fashions very easily in CorelDRAW, working with some of our raster tools and transparency modes. We'll go ahead and wrap here, and we'll see you in our next video.